Good afternoon, Robert Scribbler filming for the OBX wave report looking south and east from Jeanette's Pier. It's about 4 p.m. on this Sunday, October the 15th, I believe it's October the 15th. Yeah, Sunday, October the 15th, has some choppy waves roll in off the North Atlantic Ocean, although not as choppy as I was expecting, given some of the data coming in from the buoys and the weather stations. Nonetheless, grim foreboding skies, cooler temperatures, blustery conditions with some northwest winds chopping up the waves here. Nonetheless, doesn't look too bad to me. It looks a little rideable. And up and down the Outer Banks, conditions are much the same. All right, so let's get into some of the local reports from the wave monitors, the buoy data, and the wave models. Right here at Nag's Head, presently 3 to 4 foot and choppy conditions according to the wave monitors. North swell out of the north at 6.1 foot and 7 seconds. North-northwest winds at 20 miles per hour. Air temperatures in the lower 60s. Ocean water temperatures 71 degrees Fahrenheit. Most recent tide at 2:37 p.m. was a low tide, and then we'll be heading toward a high tide about 6 hours later. To our north in Virginia Beach, we've got 2 foot plus waves and choppy conditions. To our south in Rodanthe, 3 to 4 foot waves, choppy conditions. Primary swell out of the north at 5.9 foot and 7 seconds. North-northwest winds 20 miles per hour. Air temperatures in the lower 60s. Ocean water temperatures 71. Most recent tide was a low tide at 3:18 this afternoon. Looking at a high tide at around 9 this evening. And then at Buxton, we've got 3 foot plus waves and semi-fair conditions with a swell out of the north at 4.7 foot and 7 seconds. Winds out of the north-northwest at 20. Air temperatures in the lower 60s. Ocean water temperatures 73. Most recent tide was a low tide at 2:37, heading toward a high tide at around 8:30. And last of all, at Frisco, 2 foot plus and semi-clean conditions with those winds blowing offshore at Frisco with that south-facing beach. We are monitoring some wave generators. The primary wave generator right now is a low off the U.S. northeast coast, bringing northerly winds and that higher swell. That weather data provided by the National Weather Service, and the National Hurricane Center is presently tracking tropical depression Sean, a depression in the central tropical Atlantic, expected to become a remnant low later today as wind shear chops Sean up. And last of all, we do have a disturbance right behind Sean in the central tropical Atlantic with an 80% chance of developing into a cyclone over the next 7 days. Overall, the OBX is heading toward a fall-winter regime of surf, and this means that the primary environment that's going to influence the waves is likely to involve coastal lows and frontal systems, although that's not ruling out a tropical system, but tropical systems becoming more rare for this region of the North Atlantic as we get into late October and November and December. So we're going to be looking more toward nor'easter type weather conditions and or the intermissions between the nor'easters and the Atlantic storms that get spun up by these coastal lows, which tend to be more broad reaching but less locally intense than tropical cyclones. Nonetheless, this time of year can still provide some amazing surf, so we're going to definitely keep monitoring it for you. And I am closing in on about 1 year of daily monitoring of the waves here in the Outer Banks for you guys, even if I'm not in the Outer Banks, and I'm actually going to be going on a cruise, and we'll still be uploading our OBX wave reports from our location somewhere in the middle of the North Atlantic Ocean as we get into November. So that will be very exciting for me. I'm also very excited to be coming up on my 1-year anniversary reporting on the waves for you guys in the OBX. So thank you for joining me for this Sunday, October the 15th session of the OBX Wave Report as we welcome in the blustery weather of fall. And as I always do, I'd like to ask you guys to please do everything you can to help protect our coastlines from the impacts of climate change driven by fossil fuel burning. Climate change is primarily driven by fossil fuel burning. Don't let other distractions fool you. Oftentimes, people will tend to focus on other positive actions, don't get me wrong, like recycling or managing, reducing carbon emissions in materials production, but those emissions represent about 10% perhaps of global carbon emissions, and also in agriculture, emissions from agriculture likely representing in the range of about 10 to 15%. The remainder and the vast majority is coming from fossil fuel burning itself, and that is the lion's share of the impact related to the climate crisis is coming from fossil fuel burning, and that fossil fuel burning is the primary driver driving global heating, which is causing oceans to rise due to glacial melt and thermal expansion of the oceans, and that is a major threat to our coastline. That heating is also driving more intense storms, which do impact our coastlines, and also ocean heat waves do harm our ocean life and our sea life, which so many of us rely on. And last of all, the carbon emissions themselves cause the ocean to become more acidic, which harms the calcareous organisms in the ocean, including our coral reefs. So all of those things, a major impact to our coastlines. And if we continue fossil fuel burning, the Outer Banks are not likely to last for much more than another century, and we are going to see ramping impacts in our lifetimes. Unfortunately, a greater and greater risk of catastrophic impact as fossil fuel burning continues. So what we really need to do is mass deploy that clean energy, and then do all the other things to reduce carbon emission and impact from material production and from agriculture, and all of those things we can do. The primary low-hanging fruit right now, the rapidly deployable forms of action to help reduce the impact of the climate crisis involve mass deploying clean energy being wind, water, solar, and electric vehicles as the mass deployable forms of clean energy, which will result in rapid reductions in carbon emissions this decade. We really need to focus on that right now. And then as the other technologies and other forms of clean energy become more viable and more rapidly deployable, we need to get on board and start working on those as well. So thank you for joining me for this session of the OBX Wave Report. I hope you guys do find some good waves this week. There do look like there are going to be some opportunities, particularly on Monday and Tuesday, and we will be looking forward to that. Hopefully I'll be getting my surfboard out of the glassing shop. Did end up with a pretty major ding in it, and you know, that's just the nature of the beast. If you're going to surf, you're probably going to get some dinged up boards, and especially around here there's a lot of critical waves, fast waves, hollow waves, and very powerful waves. So just the nature of the beast. And a shout out to my good friends over at Gale Force Glass. Thank you for taking care of my board, and if you guys ever do get a ding or need some glassing work or looking for a custom shaped surfboard, I do highly recommend the good folks at Gale Force Glass. All right, so thank you guys for joining me once again, and I will be back with you shortly.